Entertainment News and Reviews podcast, where we'll discuss the world of modern entertainment media, television, video games, and movies. I'm your host, Sean Fontaine, along with co-host Jesse Skillings.
Hello.
And Derek Lloyd.
Hello.
So, last episode of the year, guys.
Yeah.
Yep.
Went pretty fast. I mean, the year in general.
It definitely did.
Yeah, I'm not sure where I rate 2019 in my favorite years list. It definitely was not a favorite year for me, but it wasn't the worst either, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of stuff went on this year, which I wouldn't say is all good, but it was interesting.
Yeah,
the year.
But aside from that, I'm hopeful, at least for the podcast, that we're going to have some pretty exciting stuff happening in 2020.
Yeah.
Like we were just talking off not camera, but off radio, the first unplugged episode we're going to be planning on doing probably in January. That should be fun.
That'll be fun. And how are you going to share that one?
So I plan on putting the video together of us on YouTube, definitely. And I was thinking we could live stream it, either on Twitch or maybe even Facebook Live. What do you guys think about that idea?
Yeah, that sounds good. I think at least from one, if we're going to do multiple camera angles, I think that'll be a different sort of animal, right?
Mm.
Right.
But if you had like one camera that you wanted to stream live, that could happen too. Yeah.
So I think maybe we could do that for like any of our Patreons, so that way they can definitely see the unedited version of us and laugh at our faces, like live, posting stuff and really heckling us.
Right.
There we go.
That'll be fun. So, all right, going into the last episode of the year, we've got a fun one today. We're going to be going into a review of Felix the Reaper, the movie Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. And I know, Jesse, you're pretty excited about your review of Black Sails.
Yep.
So I'm going to save yours for last.
Okay.
Jumping into the news. Actually, before that, I just want to mention that if you'd like to support our show, you can become a Patreon. You can sign up at patreon.com/dadhatnews and reviews. Anything that if you think you could contribute, we would greatly appreciate it. I've noticed that the costs for the show are starting to, creep up a little bit. And, I'm happy to make sure that, what needs to be done is done. But any help I would greatly appreciate. But if you can't support us financially, just listening to the show or giving us any feedback, it's just as helpful, and we would greatly appreciate it. Also, if you are a sponsor or potential sponsor who would like to have your product or services mentioned on the show, we have a spot here for you. You can contact us at dadhatnewsandreviews@gmail.com to set that up. So, all right. The news story that I was focusing on this week is something about what Jesse had mentioned in one of the previous episodes, the show Penny Dreadful. They're starting a new season, and this time they're going to have Natalie Dormer starring in it. And it looks like it's set in 1938 Los Angeles, which seems pretty interesting. What did you guys think about that article?
I love her, so I'm really excited to see her in something else. Because in Game of Thrones, she was one of my favorite characters.
Mm-hmm.
So
she's a great actress.
Yeah, I'm definitely willing to give it a chance just based off of that. I wasn't actually before when I heard that they were going to do another one. I was like, well, I'm not really that interested because the first one was so amazing and this one's going to have nothing to do with it. But knowing that she's on board, I think I might be a little more likely to watch it.
And it looks like they, so is that a pretty significant time jump? Because wasn't the original in like the 1910s or something like that?
Gosh, now I feel like I've completely forgotten the years that they had given. They just said like Victorian London when they talked about it. So
I'm so bad at history. I have no idea what time that is.
I can't remember dates ever. So
yeah, that should be interesting where it's a little more modern, just prior to World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Google tells me that the first Penny Dreadful season was set in 1891.
There we go.
So that's cool. Has anyone ever heard of that actor, Tiago Vega? He's in it.
Yeah, well, he was, what was he in? I definitely heard his name.
In the notes I have, he was in an HBO series, Here and Now. I didn't watch that.
Which I haven't heard of either, so I'm not sure.
He plays a LAPD detective in this upcoming series. Natalie Dormer is supposed to be a shape-shifting demon. Didn't they have one of those? I mean, didn't they have those in one of the seasons of Penny Dreadful?
In Penny Dreadful? Yeah. Well, yes, something very similar to that. They were more witch-based, but yes.
Okay. And the showrunner, John Logan, is returning. From what I saw the first 2 seasons. He seemed to be doing a really good job with that show, so that's promising.
Definitely.
But of course, I have no Netflix, so I won't be watching it.
I still have to get caught up on the first season. I've only seen a few episodes so far, so I'm probably a little ways out from seeing this new one. Did it say when it's coming out?
Let's see. Get the article up. I don't think it does.
I don't see any dates
Specifically.
They're just talking about the new issue of Entertainment Weekly that it came out in and stuff. But
okay, so it's probably
I don't see it mentioned.
Probably in production now or something like that.
Probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's been a pretty slow news week, I would say, or the last 2 weeks, except unless you're talking about Star Wars.
Right, which we're going to be hitting on in our next podcast.
Right.
So I wanted to hold off on anything Star Wars related. Just as a quick note, I've caught up to the last episode of The Mandalorian, and I love that show.
Yeah, I'm 4 episodes in.
It's enjoyable.
I am very pleasantly surprised. We definitely have a lot to talk about with it, so I won't go too deep into it, but it looks and feels more Star Wars to me than most of the other stuff that I've seen created, for Star Wars since, I don't know, before Force Awakens, it just looks and feels like a Star Wars movie to me. Like, they just get the world building right. It's just the right amount of dirty, old, like low tech, high tech. It's great.
Definitely.
Yeah. So we'll just hold off on that, and we'll get in deep dive into that in the first episode of next year.
Yeah.
All right. So I am going to switch up the batting order here a little bit, and I will take the first segment. I'm going to be covering Felix the Reaper. It's a quirky little game that came out in October. It's developed by Danish indie studio Kong Orange and published by Daedalic Entertainment. And before I had played this game, I hadn't heard of either of those. I guess they've made a few other eclectic mobile games, like 2D puzzle games, that I had never really heard or seen before either. If anyone's interested, though, they have a website, www.kongorange.com. The 2D games that they have look pretty cool. Felix the Reaper is available on PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, Microsoft Windows, Xbox One, and on Macintosh. The price for the game, full price is $24.99, but it's included in the Xbox Game Pass monthly subscription service, which is how I played it. It's a 3D puzzle adventure game, single player, linear progression with a pretty basic story attached. You play as Felix, who works for the Ministry of Death. In the course of his travels, he falls in love with Betty the Maiden, who works for the Ministry of Life. Unfortunately, the two never meet in the netherworld due to their jobs, only passing each other briefly on their way to work. Felix puts in for a transfer, though, to become a field reaper so that he can operate in the mortal realm, where life and death have a chance to actually meet. Also, Felix learns to dance in hopes to better his chances of catching Betty's attention. Like I said, the story is pretty basic. I find it pretty incidental to the game. I could have played this and enjoyed it just as much if they were like Tetris-style cubes.
Mm-hmm.
But the story adds, a little bit of brevity to it. The gameplay is kind of simplistic. The job of the Field Reaper is to orchestrate the demise of a mortal, either human or animal, by starting a kind of domino effect, similar to the plot of the Final Destination movie series. As you finish each level, it sets off the next event in a string of bad luck events that end up, killing something. Felix does this by moving objects into the right positions around the level. For example, he might take a piece of meat, put it in a bucket that attracts a dog, jumps into the bucket, falls in the well, was attached by a leash to the guy who falls in the well too and dies. So that's sort of like the.
Is it all for you to figure out completely on your own?
They have these little mini cutscenes at the beginning of each part of the level to kind of orchestrate or kind of set up what you need to do. So there's a little bit of structure that you already have in mind when you're starting to play the puzzle. So yeah, they set it up for you, but you have to figure out how to get to point A to point B, and to do it in between. The catch is that Felix can only move in the shadows. So when you're playing, you're forced to follow paths that are created by the shadows of objects and structures on the level. Some are static, like trees, houses, tree stumps. Some you can actually move, like barrels, bales of sticks, hay, crates, dogs, and other animals. And some are moved by switches and levers placed to the map. So like there's a sun in the level that casts a shadow on the playing field, and he can only move in the shadows, like I said. But he can manipulate things in the world to create other shadows so he can move along the map. One of the powers that Felix possesses as a Field Reaper is the ability to change the time of day, which turns and moves the position of the sun. So it creates a different path. Like if it's on one side of the map, there's one path, but he can switch it to the afternoon so that shadows are coming from the other side. So it's like it adds a little more depth to the puzzle solving, which, it's a little challenging at first. I actually got super frustrated with it at the beginning. I'm not a puzzle player. Like, I don't like a lot of puzzle solving in games. I'm more of, again, a traditional third-person action RPG player. So this was sort of out of my wheelhouse to begin with, but, I caught on eventually, longer than I would have liked. But each level, though, is pretty small. Depending on how good you're at solving puzzles, you can finish them relatively fast. It took me about 25 minutes per level because I'm very bad at puzzle solving. A good puzzle solver could probably get through each level in about 10 to 15 minutes if they really, tried. There are, on average, 4 levels per chapter in the story and 5 chapters to finish the actual game. I played the game and finished it in about 10 hours. Okay. A good puzzle solver could probably do it in under 5, maybe like even 3 to 5 if you're super good at solving puzzles. My initial impressions of the art style I liked it. It's very cartoonish, whimsical,
it's cool,
colorful. Have any of you looked at it?
Yeah, I like that. He's a neat looking character. It's kind of like a I don't know, a cross between the Reaper and Leatherface, maybe. And,
but he's got a fat little suit.
And,
little suit tie and stuff. It's almost Minecrafty in a way, but a little more bubbly. So I sort of say it's like Minecraft meets Borderlands in that kind of cell shader kind of way.
Yeah. Did you play God of War?
Not yet. I have that sitting on my table.
I'm sorry. No, I mean any God of War ever.
Nope.
Okay. All right. I was going to ask you how the puzzles compared there, because that has some puzzle solving in it, and I'm just curious what the comparison.
Oh, screw it! I'm not going to play those. But no, I have the most recent God of War. I figured a lot of people said that was a good place if you hadn't played any to just jump in.
Yeah.
And eventually, I'll probably go back and play, all the originals.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not a super fan of puzzle playing, which is funny because one of the games that got me into wanting to be a game designer was Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. I don't know if anyone's ever played that. It was for the original Xbox. It had a lot of puzzle solving. It was like a puzzle solving 3D platformer action adventure game. And I really liked that, but I think the story was so involving. It was sort of like masking the difficulty of the puzzles that I was trying to go through. This is so like on the surface that I'm like, this is just like bad Tetris.
Yeah.
But I digress. The puzzle difficulty is challenging enough not to get boring for any puzzle player, I think. However, even though the puzzles themselves get more intricate as far as the steps to complete, the core mechanic of the game does become a bit stale. And it never really evolves from the first 2 chapters. Like you find new things up to like chapter 2, and then it's all kind of the same thing, but more of it.
Right.
So in that way, I think that the developers kind of fell short of really pushing the limit of what they could have done with this game. If you're not particularly good at puzzle solving, like me, this game can get pretty frustrating at times. I had to like walk away from it for a few minutes, like go have a sandwich, and then come back. And after I gained my composure to see it with fresh eyes, and then I was able to finish the puzzles. My final thoughts on the game. Like I said, I decided to try this specifically because it falls out of my normal wheelhouse of game selection, and I wanted to see how I would do with it. While I don't really like puzzle games, this game turned out to be challenging, and I did appreciate when I was able to finish a certain level. You know, you get that sort of like immediate gratification of, oh my God, I finally finished that.
Yeah.
The story is pretty basic, and at times it's pretty comical. I was surprised, though, at the level of gore and mean-spiritedness that some of these, like I was saying, like some of the incidents are kind of akin to like that Final Destination movie franchise. And I would say it wasn't very child-friendly in certain instances. The gore is cartoony, though, of course, but parents may want to keep that in mind if, you know, they want to let their kids play this game.
Yeah.
The story was pretty incidental overall, and I definitely would not pay full price for this game, but since it was part of Xbox Game Pass, I would definitely give it a try, even if it's not something that you're used to, because like I said, it's not anything that I would have chosen right off the bat, but I did like the challenge.
Cool.
Ended up enjoying it anyway.
Yeah. An interesting footnote on the game is there's a narrator who's actually Felix's boss, and the voice is of Sir Patrick Stewart.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
He's actually in the game. Like, it's this total no-name company, total no-name game, yet they were able to get Patrick Stewart to voice act in it, which is actually weird, but kind of cool.
Yeah.
But are you guys into puzzle games at all?
I like them, yeah.
I do. Yeah, I'm not good at them, but I enjoy them.
I bet you guys would like this a lot more than I did if you try it.
I like
If
the
it's on
ones.
the Switch, I'll definitely give it a shot. Yeah.
I sort of like, you know, the kind of the puzzle games. Like I mentioned God of War because it made me think of it, where there's like little telltale clues on how to do something in a room, or, you know, and you have to kind of like walk around and examine everything and sort of figure how things work together. I think I've always enjoyed that kind of that game mechanic.
A good thing with this game too is it does give you the side menu that if you're really stumped, it'll give you a hint if you really want to. Like, it'll actually show an arrow pointing in a certain direction that you have to go, or it might highlight a bale of hay that you probably need to pick up to put somewhere.
Gotcha.
Give you a little out, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I used a lot.
I probably would too, honestly. Just because I enjoy them doesn't mean I'm good at them. So.
And my goal was to just, you know, finish the game. So like, I was like, I'm not going to torture myself. I'm just going to use the hints when I can use them.
Yeah. And what did you play it on?
The Xbox. It's Xbox One. It's part of their monthly Game Pass subscription. So if you have the subscription, it's technically free. Otherwise, you could buy it outright for $24.99. But I think with the lack of content and the lack of progression of, the difficulty progresses, but the difference, the different things you can do in the game don't really progress beyond halfway through. So I don't think it's really worth full price.
Yeah. And there's no real like replayability. It's not like you can go a second time and try to do something different than you did before, right?
They do. There's actually a hardcore version of each level.
Okay.
But I completely stayed away from those. I was just not really in the mind frame of trying to do something that hard.
Right.
But it is there. So like, you could probably go through the entire game again on hard mode and have a whole new. Oh yeah. One of the things that I did see, which was interesting, the game, the levels are like sort of like set up in a grid, and you have to move along the grid. One of the things in the hardcore mode is as you move along the grid, there are certain spots of the grid that just kind of fall out. So like, you can't go backwards once you've gone past it. So
Okay.
it makes it a little more challenging for those who are into that sort of thing. And the story, even though it was, you know, pretty basic and simple, there is a nice little payoff at the end when you reach it. So,
cool.
And it does open up a chance for a sequel where they could actually implement a lot more mechanics, which they could have probably done in this game.
Sure.
But they're probably just holding it off so that they could like actually do, you know, a second game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I bet you guys would like it.
Cool.
I might check it out.
Yeah.
All right. So I figured I'd let you guys decide who would go next, because I know Jesse's really excited to get into Black Sails, but I know that I saw Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, and I'm pretty excited for that review.
Yeah, I can take a stab at that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm so excited that you might want me to go at the end so I can like tailor how long I go on about this show.
I'll know when you cut you off.
There you go.
All right. Well, I'll launch into Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood then. I just saw it. It was a couple of days ago, and I took my son Caden to see it, who is almost 11. He'll be turning 11 in March. It's directed by Marielle Heller, who I didn't realize I had seen recently another one of her movies. She seems to have a kind of a short resume so far, but one of the most recent movies she's done was called Can You Ever Forgive Me? With Melissa McCarthy. Have either of you seen that?
No.
It's really good. It's based on a true story about a writer, this woman who sort of had not a very fruitful career as an author of, I think she was, can't remember what she was writing, if it was novels or if she was doing like historical pieces on people, but she never had really had much success. And, her books were very often winding up on the, Barnes and Noble's table that was, discounted books that aren't doing well. And she sort of like ends up realizing that she has a very special talent in forging letters from famous classical authors. So she like writes like a personal letter, for example, from like a classic author like Emily Dickinson or something like that. So it would be a note or a letter sent by that author to someone in their family. And apparently there's this whole subculture of collectors who gather those things and they become collector's items basically. So she realizes that she has an incredible talent for sort of speaking in the voice of great authors as if they were writing to other people. And she sort of engages in a career of forgery, where she writes these fake notes and sells them. It's a true story. And it basically tells her journey. I really liked it. It kind of came and went from the theaters really quickly. And I ended up seeing it on streaming on something, but I really think Melissa McCarthy's awesome. And this looked like one of her first very like serious roles. She's in a lot of comedies. Do you guys know who she is? It's Bridesmaids and movies like that.
Yeah, she's really funny.
Yeah. So Marielle Heller's that's the only other movie that she had done that I had directed that I had seen. I think her first movie was called The Diary of a Teenage Girl, which had some critical acclaim, but I haven't seen yet. And it's written by Micah Fitzerman Blue and Noah Harpster. And I sort of went through their resumes, and I didn't recognize a lot of the films and TV shows that they've authored. But it is starring Tom Hanks, who has been in everything. The guy basically has one of the most classic, crazy runs of great movies in history. I mean, the 90s for Tom Hanks was just an incredible. If you go through the films that he was in from like 1990 onward, it's just incredible.
It's funny how he just came from Bosom Buddies. Do you remember that show?
Oh, I remember it. Yeah,
I love that show.
Me too. And it's amazing how far he's come.
Yeah.
And some of the other starring actors are actually the main character of the movie is played by Matthew Rhys, who I had never seen before. Apparently his biggest role was playing the character Philip Jennings on a TV show called The Americans. And he's been in a host of other TV and film appearances, which I didn't know at all. Then there's Chris Cooper, who I know very well. Chris Cooper is one of those actors that pretty much at this point everyone recognizes. But I think he's only just getting to the point a few years ago where we knew his name. He's always been like, oh yeah, that guy, I know him. He's in, and you know the movie he's in, but you don't know his name. But he was in A Time to Kill. He plays that shitty next door neighbor dad in American Beauty, the sort of military.
Oh, okay.
The Born Identity adaptation, Seabiscuit, Jarhead, Syriana. He's in The Town playing Ben Affleck's sort of washed up father.
Yes, he's a good actor. I didn't know the name. You're right.
He's amazing. And then Susan Kelechi Watson, who is she's sort of like recently become famous for her role as Beth Pearson in the show This Is Us, which I haven't seen yet, but my wife loves it.
Mm-hmm.
But A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, it's like a sort of a strange movie. It's a film that signals itself as the story of Fred Rogers, the beloved sweater-wearing star of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which was a long-running children's television show that ran from 1968 to 2001. But the movie actually really isn't here to tell us his arc at all, which is what I went in expecting to see. It's actually a story about a character, Lloyd Vogel, who was a writer for Esquire magazine, and he's been assigned to turn in a puff piece on Mr. Rogers for a special feature in an issue on like heroes or American heroes or something like that. And Lloyd is told that Fred Rogers is the only celebrity being featured in the issue that is agreeing to be interviewed by him, because Lloyd's known to be an extremely cynical and unkind writer who often delivers like unflattering perspectives on the people that he's interviewing. So nobody wants to be interviewed by this guy because he always talks shit about them. But Mr. Rogers is one of the only people that had agreed to be interviewed by him. So he's not pleased about the assignment, but he reluctantly sets out for Pittsburgh to meet with Mr. Rogers after his editor gives him no choice in the matter at all. So the film after that features Mr. Rogers as an influence on the life and mind of this guy. And Lloyd's life is in a state of anxiety and disarray. He's plagued by like old hatreds for his father, who's recently wandered back into his life after years of estrangement, having abandoned him and his sister when their mother was dying years before. He's also grappling with his own confused feelings about his responsibilities at home and to his newborn child and his wife. But it's strange that A Beautiful Day it's really his story and how his interviews with Fred Rogers come to impact his own life. But we do learn a few things about Mr. Rogers that perhaps we didn't know, like, is he the same sort of person off screen that he was on the show? Which, I don't know how many listeners will remember Mr. Rogers, but he's a very unique guy. Like he just seemed to be almost supernaturally kind and soft-spoken in a way that is a little unusual. Maybe even off-putting. I know that
I was going to say that.
Yeah, I'll get more into that later for sure. How my personal feelings towards him. The movie's a little corny in a soap opera kind of way. It deals with like deep, heavy issues, but so did the show on occasion. In fact, it was sort of famous for that. Mr. Rogers would often sort of dive into tackling really heavy themed topics like, divorce and death and loss, and present it to in a way that, children can understand, I guess. That's not the best way to put it, but he was always like, children, they are, they can understand a lot more than you think they can. So let's talk about these topics and let them sort of, grapple with it in a natural way. So he did have a knack for doing that kind of stuff. And it's based on that, the way that the movie is presented, it seems a fitting narrative to demonstrate that, considering how, Mr. Rogers himself chose to present things in the actual show. The movie even transitions between scenes. So the actual film transitions between scenes. Like if somebody gets on a plane to go somewhere, I don't know if you remember, the show would often have this like miniature world laid out, and you'd see like a little toy car driving. So, whenever a movie transitions, like when Lloyd goes on a trip to go visit with Mr. Rogers, it cuts to a transition using those little toy cars and stuff like that. And that was kind of a nice little touch. It made you, a connective way. Connecting to the show. And Tom Hanks was obviously the correct choice to play the iconic TV show host. I mean, Hanks and Rogers are both American icons in their own right, basically. And as usual, Hanks reliably delivers the sort of excellence that you'd expect from him. He's really seldom misses the mark, and at this point in his career gets to basically choose everything that he's a part of, and I think it was a really good choice. I guess Fred Rogers' real world wife agreed that he was a perfect choice and really loved what he did with the role. So I liked the movie. I would probably, if forced to give it a rating, I would say 3.5 out of 5 stars. I'm not sure that I always say that a 4-star movie for me is something that I would want to watch again and again and again. And I don't know that this movie landed there for me. I did like it, but I do feel that my own personal feelings towards Mr. Rogers and how I experienced him as a kid, it definitely, kind of like impacts how I enjoy this movie. Like I never liked his show. I sort of, it's a weird place to be. I kind of respect it, but it's the kind of, whenever adults would communicate with me as a child in any way, like Mr. Rogers communicated with, the fictional neighbor, you watching the show, I didn't like it. It always felt vaguely creepy to me, or almost even if he's
talking down to you almost.
Yeah, even if he's being
if it was condescending or
a little bit. It's more like you can see the strings. Like I was always able to clearly this person is speaking to me in a way that's trying to evoke certain feelings. But I, as a kid, and as an adult, I always feel like I can see those strings. It's weird because I want a movie or a piece of entertainment to manipulate me. I want that to happen. I want to be moved. I want to be made to feel happy or sad, but I don't want to see the strings, if you know what I mean. Like I don't, it's something maybe in the writing or in the way that a person is speaking. And Mr. Rogers, definitely, I've always sort of felt that kind of lack of connection because I don't know. It always felt like a little too much to me. And of course, I personally have this sensitivity to overt religiosity. It's always rubbed me the wrong way. And, I know he's a deeply religious man. And even though he was never, he would never sort of lob that at you as a part of his communication on the show, you always got that underneath. He always kind of reminded me of that, the gentle preacher type of speech pattern that it never reached me in any way. So my love for the show was pretty thin. In fact, I would very seldom watch it. I could only take a little bit of it. It would always be on when I was a kid. It always felt like it would land around Sesame Street, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, and he'd come on and I'd be like, I can't take much of this, So I would switch the channel even as a kid. I guess that was probably I would guess 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, which should have been prime to be, prime age to receive the type of delivery he was giving. But I never really enjoyed it. That said, it's clear that he was a nice man and it seems like he had a good heart and was very genuine and was very much in life the kind of person that he was on his show. My son gave it 4 stars.
Nice.
He liked it. It does manage to elevate as a movie above maybe just standard melodrama. And I credit really the filmmakers for achieving that because they just do a few little, I don't want to call them tricks, but they do a few things in the movie, like the transitional scenes between, when they use the toy cars and stuff like that. I felt that was really well done. And then I think that the movie's most poignant moment actually comes about midway where Lloyd and Mr. Rogers are having a lunch together.
Oh yeah, where they broke the fourth wall.
A little bit, yeah. It's really good. Yeah, he's basically trying to sort of step Lloyd through getting some of his it's clear that Lloyd's got some demons from the past that he's trying to get past. And the film, Mr. Rogers, is sort of a small spoiler, but not a big thing about the plot or anything like that. But he asks Lloyd, and through Lloyd asks us to just give a minute of silence the things that you're thankful for. I think specifically he says try to remember the most important people in your life and how they
the people that loved you into being.
Yes, and the film actually gives a minute. It's a minute that no one speaks, and it's delivered mostly in silence, like they're in a restaurant, and even the clinking of the glasses completely drowns out. And it's like 60 seconds of just you left to think in a way that is instructed by Mr. Rogers. It was kind of neat. I thought it was like really well done, and I've never seen something quite like that. So I thought
I like I like the cut to Tom Hanks in that scene where he's looking at Lloyd, and just slightly he shifts his gaze at the camera.
Exactly. Yeah, it was really cool. It was well done. I got a little. It hit me in the right way, and I thought it was a bold choice, and it worked really well. Every once in a while, a movie will take these kind of like crazy bold choices, and sometimes they hit, and sometimes they don't. Like, what comes to mind is like in the movie Magnolia, where they all do that song, where all the different plot threads, they're all people singing the same song. Have you guys seen that movie?
No.
It's like a scene where like a song plays in the middle, and it cuts to all the many different plot threads that movie follows, and every single one of the different actors in their own little story kind of pauses to sing the same song. And I'm not really sure that one works, but it was still a bold choice, and this reminded me of that a little bit.
I think it's interesting when you mentioned how just the voice of Mr. Rogers affected you in a certain way. When my wife, I saw it first, and then my wife and I saw it while we were out in California. She loved it, and she loved Mr. Rogers as a kid. I was pretty neutral to him in general. Like, I more focused on when like the toy puppets were talking and stuff. As a little kid, I mean, I was fine with him. Like, I didn't feel like he seemed condescending or even creepy, but I wasn't like super like, oh my God, Mr. Rogers either. So But when I was in the theater the second time and we watched it, something happened that made me think, and it really made me feel bad about how he is perceived because of the way he was speaking, the way he delivered. There was only like 5 of the people in the theater because this is like 3 weeks after the release, and there were these people, a family sitting in the front or near the front row, and we were 3/4 of the way back. And there was this part, and there was certain parts where like his speaking mannerisms, like where Tom Hanks is doing his mannerisms, really like hit the mark of how Mr. Rogers was speaking. And these people would like laugh. And I'm just like, I was like, it's sad that the fact that he was trying to communicate in a way, in Mr. Rogers in general, was trying to communicate in a way that was clear, easy to understand, non-condescending, pleasant. Like he was, I can tell looking at it nowadays, looking back, he was very particular about how he spoke. Like, he didn't just ramble. Like, he thought about what he would say. He had a certain way to deliver it. And today it comes off as comical, like, and people who look at that laugh. And I'm like, he's just trying to be a nice guy.
Right.
Give him a break,
It actually was like his entire ethos was to be a nice person, like,
yes.
And that's really admirable. I mean, even regardless of any of the reasons that might be there behind it all, it's an admirable thing to try to do. So I really respect him for that, for sure. And, it's interesting. The movie touches on this a little bit, and it's something that I had heard said of all people, which is, I know this is a strange segue to make, but it's something I heard about Tom Cruise. And it's about how people who are incredible communicators, it's a quality and a trait that they all seem to possess, which is to give 100% of their attention to whoever it is that they happen to be with all the time. They and like, I've heard that about Tom Cruise. Like, it's one of those, like, he's supposedly, like, I don't know. I don't want to belittle anybody's profession or career, but like, let's just say the person who like parks his car, right? He pulls up somewhere, that he gives so much enthusiasm and attention to even the people that in Tom Cruise's life are the people that park his car. You know what I mean? Or serve in some capacity in the circles he travels in. And I like that. I think that's really awesome. Like, every person who you meet has has a value to be heard or listened to in a way. They might have something to contribute to your life or you to theirs. And Mr. Rogers definitely took that on board, and it touches on. I think he even almost flat out says that at one point where
when he first talks to him on the phone.
Yeah, he's like, I am 100% or something like that. He says how
who's the most important person in the world to me right now? Lloyd Vogel.
That's right. That's what it was. That's exactly it. And I think that's a really cool philosophy to at least strive for.
It's a rare one.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's clearly a really nice man and had people's best interests at heart and did a lot of good things for a lot of people and brought a lot of things to his show that I think were very culturally relevant and important. And all of that contrasts and slams into the notion of a man who wants to speak to me through his puppets. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard. It's hard for me to like parse all that, you know, like,
yeah,
I don't know. There's like, it's just a little weird. Like, you know, it's whatever he was, a 50-year-old man, and let me open my case that has these 3 puppets in it. And I mean, if I was in the room, there's a scene where, you know, just to kind of set the stage, there's a scene where Lloyd Vogel is at Mr. Rogers' house and they're having they're trying to continue their interview after 1 or 2 sort of failed attempts to do so or shortened attempts to do so. And, you know, Mr. Rogers reaches into his case and pulls out these puppets. And if I was Lloyd Vogel sitting in that room, I would be like, what's happening here? Like, you know, you're going to talk to me as a puppet and he's doing the voice and everything. And I mean, you know, I get it. I get like how the role that these puppets sometimes play in the lives of communicating with children. And this is all about like kind of connecting with some of the things that happened in Lloyd's past as a child, but still it's a puppet.
Yeah. Like, he's literally, can you just put the puppet away from me?
Yeah, he at least spoke as I would. He's like, oh.
I feel like you guys would really appreciate my mom's house because she has collected marionettes and puppets since I was
nice.
like an infant. So it's like living in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood.
Did she talk to you with the dolls and the puppets?
Okay, so she totally did, but only as a joke.
Yeah, right.
She was always just like, I know I'm being ridiculous right now, but...
Yeah, so it was good. I did like it. I really do recommend the movie. I know I always lean towards like criticism, but I mean that's what we're doing here, I guess, right? So there, my connection to Mr. Rogers was always threadbare. Respected him always, but I can't say that I was ever deeply affected by his manner in any way. I just acknowledge it and respect it. And I think it's cool that other people benefit from that. That's all good stuff. That's I'd leave it there. I think the only other little bits of trivia that I thought were interesting, I found out apparently that days before the film premiered, it was somehow determined through, I don't know if they did a genealogy or whatever, that Tom Hanks is apparently Fred Rogers' 6th cousin.
Oh, wow.
But he did, according to the trivia that I read, he did the film and that wasn't realized until days before the film premiered, which I thought was interesting. And this is also Tom Hanks's 8th film where he plays a real life person. So I didn't go through all of them. I know obviously some of them come to mind, but I didn't put the list.
He's like the go-to person for like anything that's like this major. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad that you shared that it's from a completely different perspective, because I feel like the trailers don't really let on to that very much. And I feel like if I went and saw that in theaters, for me personally, that might have been off-putting enough that it might have kind of tinted how I looked at the film. So I'd rather go into it knowing that it's not just a Mr. Rogers story. It's also this other guy, you know?
It's really about his ability to affect other people around him. And you're largely with Lloyd Vogel. In fact, I'd have to kind of check this, but I think you're with him the whole time.
That's really interesting.
I'm not sure that the film ever... Yeah, I'm not sure.
Isn't he in every scene?
I was going to say, I'm not sure that there's any scene he's not in.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's really just about the way that Mr. Rogers impacts his life. You do learn some cool things about Mr. Rogers' life, and there is some implication that telling his biopic in a way might actually be interesting. I sort of like almost wish there was a version where you got to see him, because he wasn't a perfect guy. And it does go into, he apparently had a bit of an anger problem that he had to sort of grapple with. And he had some difficulty with his children. He has at least 2 sons. And it touches on that a little bit in an exposition kind of way. So you learn a little bit about him that sort of fulfills some of that desire to, get a little bit more detail about who he was as a person. But it was good. I definitely recommend it. People should see it. Maybe not a super rewatchable movie. I'd maybe be satisfied to see it one more time, maybe. But
I definitely landed on 3.5 stars, like you.
Yeah.
And you said your son enjoyed it.
He did, yeah. And I am, through our children, often we get to sort of experience things again vicariously for the first time, it feels like. And I think about this sort of stuff. I've seen this type of story. So Lloyd Vogel's story in this film is very much a story that we've all seen before in different types of dramas, from TV drama to even sitcom drama to other films. But our children, this is their first experience with those types of films, right? It's the first time that he's seen a story really about a son who had a problem with a dad who happened to be a real jerk, in the past, and how he grapples with that. And the movie touches on some themes of death and dealing with death. And so that occurred to me at the end of the film, it probably resonates with him a little harder there, so especially with he's there sitting next to his dad in a theater, and here's a story about a film about a story of a guy who had a difficult relationship with his father. And so that probably has an impact on how it felt for him.
It was almost shocking to me that the heaviness of the movie at the beginning, and just the setup with Lloyd Vogel.
Yeah.
It really wasn't what I was expecting.
I know. Yeah, it was good. You think you're seeing maybe a recreation of one of the scenes from his show there, right?
Yeah.
And then it's he opens the little window and there's Lloyd Vogel's,
Yep.
face.
That was a little weird, but they did a really good job with it.
They did. Yeah, it's a well-made movie for sure.
All right. Let's go from that to Adventure on the High Seas with Jesse's review.
Great. Okay, so I do want to start off by saying that if you haven't seen Black Sails, definitely, as much as it pains me to say it, and if you don't want any spoilers, you probably shouldn't listen to my review of it, because it's really hard to avoid a couple of key things that are rather big reveals in it.
Fine, just ruin it for us.
I'm going to totally ruin it for you guys, so sorry. But besides that, the series ran for 4 seasons between 2014 and 2017, and it takes place 20 years prior to the novel Treasure Island. We follow Captain Flint, John Silver, Jack Rackham, characters like Anne Bonny, Billy Bones, Captain Vane, and a character named Woods Rogers, who was actually, I guess they based a rescue that he made of someone loosely for the novel Robinson Crusoe. So there's actually 2 novels kind of woven throughout the series, and a lot more people, but those are probably some of the more well-known names of pirates back then. There are some really strong characters in the series, men and women. We start by seeing how this character named Eleanor Guthrie is running the island of Nassau. Pirates in reality did actually run it for, I think the trivia said 12 years in real history. So while Eleanor wasn't real, her family, the Guthries, were actually a Scottish clan that did a lot of dealings with the pirates. So there's a lot of reality-based facts in the show, which I really enjoy. The characters and character development are just amazing. It's my favorite part of the show. You can find a character in the first episode, and by the time you watch the last episode of the 4 seasons, they are completely changed. I don't think that there's a single character that didn't grow or change or become entirely different in some way.
That's cool.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't lack in character development at all. Whether you love them or hate them. I mean, there are definitely some characters that when they came on screen, I was like, oh, he just seems so annoying. And by the end of the show, I was like, I hope he wins everything. You know? So it's definitely one of those shows that really gets you involved. There really aren't any background characters in the show. I mean, obviously there are extras in the show, but everybody is so well developed, and even characters that you just hear mentioned here and there have such a rich background story. So it's really hard to just say, oh, well, that person wasn't really important. Like, this was such an ensemble cast.
That's cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. There's, probably one of my favorite characters was, well, I had like two favorites, but Billy Bones was one of my favorites. He's played by the guy who played in Umbrella Academy, and I'm drawing a blank on his real name right now, but he was kind of like the bigger, tough dude in that. So he plays Billy Bones in this, and his character grows a lot, just like everybody else's. He starts off as kind of the moral conscience of like the whole show and the crew, and he's kind of the audience's conscience. I feel like you definitely kind of turn to him and see, well, what's he doing right now, to kind of see where you should be at on all the other characters, and the plot thickens. And then by the end of the show, I was like so shocked by the changes in his character. So
is it Tom Hopper?
Yes, it's Tom Hopper. Thank you. Yep. The guy from, well, a bunch of stuff, but I most recently saw him in Umbrella Academy. So, but everything it's a really full story. In the 4 seasons that you see, you're going to see from start to finish what exactly leads us up to Treasure Island. And they do change some things, and some characters are a little different and stuff like that, but it's not, I don't know. It doesn't detract from it at all.
What kind of time frame is it from the beginning of the series to the end?
You know what? I'd have to probably look that up to be able to quote it accurately, but it's not that long. They kind of show mostly the development of the friendship between Captain Flint and John Silver. And that really, their entire story goes on for quite some time, but what they're showing is kind of the downfall of the pirates in Nassau, and how they ultimately lose control, well, mostly, of the island. So, and
are they like 1 hour-ish episodes?
They're about 40 minutes, 45.
Okay.
And it's all on Hulu right now and DVD.
Yeah, I can see it then.
Oh, well, there you go.
Hey.
Yeah, you should definitely, I think you should give it a shot. Like I said, I almost picked this as my TV
Top
series
pick
of the decade. So.
And the production value is pretty good. Looks good.
Oh, it's great. It's like watching a mini movie each time.
I love that.
Yeah. No, they definitely put the time and effort into it. And like I said, the characters are well-rounded. The ending was really beautifully done. Like I said, they told a full story. And one of the things I really liked about it was that so I'm trying to think of like a sensitive way to say this, but I'm not normally one to appreciate when shows nowadays kind of like have to have a gay character just to have one. Like, as a bisexual woman, I think representation matters, obviously, but I hate when it doesn't fit with the story.
Sure.
So one of the things I loved about Black Sails was they took actually 2 separate triads of people, and one of them involved a gay character. And they made it so realistic and so subtle that you didn't even, throughout the whole series, you have no idea this character is gay. But it's so important to the plot at the end, and it ties in really well. It's not this well, where'd that come from? That made no sense.
Not exploitive. It's like actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really beautiful. It was really enjoyable to watch how all of that unfolded. And yeah, the 2 triads in it are kind of cool. I like the there's like a Jack Rackham and Bonnie, who actually were married in real life, or together in real life, triad with this other really strong female character. It was really interesting.
It must be a testament to the writing or the directing that it didn't feel like it was shoehorned in there just to cover the, all right, political correctness, check,
Yes, we checked that box and now we can move on. So
did you have any prior connection to like or knowledge of the actual Treasure Island novel or anything like that before watching the show?
I did. I've read it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. It wasn't like my top 20 novels or anything, but it was a good story. And I've always enjoyed, a little bit of pirate history. And I think Anne Bonny's a fascinating character. So watching her in this was really cool.
I feel like my knowledge of I haven't read Treasure Island. A Philistine, obviously, but there's a lot of the stuff I haven't seen. Do you feel as though enjoyment of the show is there any kind of prior requirement, or can you just come to Black Sails completely like, I don't know the events of Treasure Island at all, other than like a very vague understanding of it? Does it matter, or do you feel like you should know that first?
I'd say it 100% does not matter. You're going to love the story.
Okay. Cool.
And especially since some things have to change a little bit. So even having known the story of Treasure Island, you might still be a little lost at the end of Black Sails.
Okay. Yep.
I might be a little naive. So go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying it stands on its own completely. So
I was going to say, I might be a little naive, but was there ever a movie adaptation of Treasure Island?
Yes, it was called Muppet Treasure Island. No, there. I believe there was, but I wouldn't want to be quoted on that. I feel like it was older.
Like, I feel like there must have been some kind of Disney movie that touched on it.
I think so.
Listen, it's a good movie.
So good.
It is a must-see before you see Black Sails.
We actually, it's pretty sad, but we quoted a lot of Muppet Treasure Island while we watched it. So every time Tom's character came on, Billy Bones, we were like, "Oh, Billy Bones!" Yeah, so we couldn't stop ourselves.
Google has just told me that there's a 1950 film called Treasure Island. There's also a 1983. Is that right?
1983.
I'm sure that's right. It says Robert. I don't know. Actually, it just says Treasure. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's not right. I read it wrong. It says Treasure Island 1883. So don't listen to me at all. Then there's Treasure Island, a TV movie on IMDb in 2012. That's kind of recent.
Oh, okay.
So, it might be interesting to see those and see how they line up, if at all.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are other movies that touch on it, but are probably called something else, right? Like it's not Treasure Island; it's called something else. But it's the same story.
You know what one I might be remembering vaguely is did you see the 1990 TV movie listed there with Charlton Heston and Christian Bale?
No.
That looks horribly familiar to the back of my brain right now.
Yeah, but 1990 film, Treasure Island. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say definitely watch Muppets Treasure Island and then Black Sails.
First that up.
It's a seamless transition.
Cool.
Nice.
But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was very realistic, beautifully done, and the characters were amazing.
Were there any like quirky, like Jack Sparrow kind of characters?
I would say Jack Rackham was pretty similar to that, but not as goofy.
And it wasn't intentional, right? It was just like, that's the way he played his character.
Yeah, because he was based on a real person, and he was kind of quirky himself. They called him Calico Jack because he wore a lot of kind of brightly colored clothing and stuff like that. So I think he's probably the closest, but nobody quite as silly because it's a lot more serious of a show.
And one I can actually see now because it's on Hulu.
Yay! I'll try to do more of those.
Nice.
Do we know where it originally appeared? Was it
Hulu, Black Sails was a Starz original.
Starz, okay.
Yes.
Cool. Good to know.
Yeah, I got to see this one.
Awesome. All right. Nice review. So wrapping up for the last episode of 2019, any more final thoughts?
I can't wait to see the beautiful Day in the Neighborhood movie now.
I'm excited for the next one. I know
Yeah, me too.
I love to talk Star Wars, so I'm pretty pumped to do that, and I'm interested to see where I end up landing. The reviews have been interesting to watch. I've been watching them with one eye so that I don't come across, read any actual spoilers. But it's kind of funny. I'm noticing that a lot of the people that were the reviewers who loved The Last Jedi. Somehow, I don't know how, but it's the reviewers who loved The Last Jedi are very critical of this one.
Really? That's good news.
I was going to say that's actually promising, right?
Yeah, that makes you happy, I bet.
Yeah. And, I have heard a lot of the people saying that it's very pandering to the fan base, I think, or something to that effect, that they're like, it's a lot of like fulfilling fan desire as opposed to presenting a new and challenging perspective. And I'm like, I don't know.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's like a criticism that you're trying to make the people who love the movie happy seems like a strange criticism, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, that's a weird, kind of thing to hit on the mark, is actually make the fans happy.
Yeah, right.
But I did also caught a glimpse of a review that the gist of it, I don't remember specifically, but it's like, it was almost like insulting Rian Johnson specifically.
Yeah.
Like the movie was insulting to him.
And I was like, yeah.
We are going in the right direction now.
That's right.
And I've been prepping, since I got the Disney Channel, I've been watching all of the Star Wars movies, in a row, chronologically in story, chronological order. So right now I'm on Rogue One, and I'm moving along. It actually, after the fact, I really like all of it back to back. I know there was like, when it was just the prequels, there was like this debate on how, like, what was the best order to watch Star Wars movies.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just prepping for that, it really flows really well, just watching them back to back, and the story flows really nicely. I mean, the acting is still what it is, at least for the prequels.
Right.
But I really, giving it some time to go back to, I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah.
Prequels along into the new story. Well, not the new story, but you know what I mean.
The prequels are deeply flawed, but there's still a lot to enjoy in them. There's a lot of, the prequels' failures are really about failing to make us really, I feel like Anakin's fall to the dark side should have been like I should have been sad about it, but instead I'm like eagerly waiting for it to happen because he was so unlikable, it would have been so much better if like I really liked Anakin, and the movie really failed to make me like him.
Was it the acting or was it the writing?
Both. It's definitely both. I can't be just the acting, because I absolutely love Christian Haydenson in there's a movie that a lot of people haven't seen.
Life is a House. Please say Life is a House.
Oh, that wasn't the one. It's Shattered Glass is the one I'm talking about.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Love that movie, and he's amazing in it. He plays like based on a real journalist that was doctoring. He was basically writing fake stories for a very prestigious magazine, and it
Yes.
It was just he's great in it.
It was really intense.
Yeah. So I don't really have anything against Christian Haydenson, other than maybe he was the wrong choice for the casting. But I mean, he was just given the worst dialogue maybe in the history of like blockbuster films, and that's saying a lot when Michael Bay's out there doing his work. So
yeah,
the
Sand Clones was hard.
Oh, it was brutal, man.
Yeah,
it was rough to get through.
Yeah, but I mean, it has some moments that are really high, and like, who doesn't really like the final fight scene in Phantom Menace? It's great, it's like super high action, and
Duel of the Fates. The music itself was amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, it was an enjoyable scene, and if you could take some of those scenes and make a better movie, that would be awesome.
Agreed.
What are you guys doing for Christmas?
Sean, what are you doing?
I think we're just hanging out. We did our Christmas with her father and her stepmother in California a week ago, and we're not really going to be traveling much at all. We sometimes go down to my parents in Massachusetts, but we already kind of sent gifts via Amazon direct delivery. So we're just gonna chill. We're gonna stay home,
relax.
Yeah.
That sounds nice.
What about you guys?
I've got my nieces are coming over, and my mother will be here. We're probably gonna do like a turkey Christmas dinner, that kind of thing. Open presents here, but it will all be at my house, so I don't have to do any traveling, which is great.
Also nice.
Yeah. How about you?
Well, we've got my, we like alternate, we do the typical step family alternate holidays thing. So we've got my 2 step kids this year for Christmas. So
Awesome.
we'll get to do, sometimes we have to rearrange Christmas a little, which is fine. You know, it usually works out pretty well. But this year we get to do it like actually on Christmas Eve and Christmas. So
Sounds good.
my son's pretty excited about that. And then, I don't know, if anybody's looking for anything to do in like Hamden, Connecticut, a few days after, the Fear of the Masses is playing a show, so I'm going out there right after Christmas
Awesome.
to go take pictures. But that's about my whole week planned out.
Very cool. Yeah, your pictures are awesome, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I really like doing it a lot more now. When I first started, I was like, well, I'll do the guys a favor and get some like shots here and there. And now I'm like, I need a new lens and a new flash for Christmas. And
Is there
It'll be nice.
Is there a place where people can like check out their stuff online?
Yeah, the best place to find Fear the Masses is probably on Facebook. So if you just search for them, they'll come right up. I think they're the only band listed under that name. So
Cool. It has the dates to play and everything, and where they're going to be playing and all that.
Yeah, they just put out a new poster with all the dates and stuff. They've got quite a few shows coming up. They're actually doing a show with, I don't know if you guys remember Soulfly, but
yeah,
pretty big. And
yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, they're doing one with them in February 27th. So
Sweet.
if you guys want tickets, let me know.
Cool. That's awesome.
Oh, after the show, if you remind me, Jesse, I'll put some links in the show description.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah.
So, and one other thing I wanted to mention, I remember you guys said in the chat last night, you were doing some homework of Derek's top picks. Jesse, you watched the movie?
I did. I ended up watching Drive, and I really liked it. It was intense.
Yeah, I was glad. I remember you saying after the fact, like, I remembered after having recommended that you don't love a lot of like, not that there's a lot of gore, but there's at least one scene that you're like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Hopefully that doesn't.
Yeah, like you know, I mean, I don't want to give anything away, but you're definitely like, what are you gonna do with that? What's up?
Yeah.
Is that the one with the getaway driver?
Yes.
Yes.
The movie. That's what the movie's basically about. Yeah. It's really a romance and kind of a superhero.
Not Baby Driver though, because we both talked about similar.
Correct. Yeah, they're very similar concepts, but
this one is
hugely different execution.
Yes, very different execution. Kind of the same amount of violence, I feel like, in some scenes, but yes.
Did you see what I was talking about with that elevator scene?
Oh my goodness.
So good. But I mean, like the moment prior to the explosive violence, I just think is so incredibly well done. Like he knows at that moment that this is sort of like, it's like the last chance to be real with her, you know? Like,
yeah, no, it was.
The lighting kind of changes as he sort of pushes her back. I love that scene so much.
It was really good. And my husband watched it with me and he was like, I think this is in his head. And I was like, they haven't done that yet throughout the film. So I don't think it is. Like, I think something awful is about to go down.
It's a valid perspective though. It's definitely like I considered the same thing at one point.
Yeah. No, the lighting changed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's like dreamy.
Yes.
Is that
it was
on
a good
Netflix?
film. So
Is it on Hulu or Netflix?
It is on Netflix.
Yeah.
God damn it.
We're going to have to give you a login or something.
I'm going to have to get your code.
Yeah, we got to catch you up.
I can do some catch up. All right, guys. I think that's a wrap for 2019 and our first season of Dad Hat Entertainment News and Reviews.
Yay.
Yay.
And if you guys are enjoying listening to us, please let us know. Please like, follow, and subscribe on our social links. And make sure if you're watching on YouTube, click the little bell for notifications. But other than that, thanks again for listening. And I think that's it. We'll see you next year. Take care.
Bye, neighbor. Bye, neighbors.
Damn it. That's so funny. He's not a bad guy. He just talks funny.
Bye.